Greetings everyone, Brad here with Mild Mannered EDC. I hope you're all doing really well out there. So today we are going to take a look at a knife from Quiet Carry. That's right, this is the Quiet Carry Chase. Now this particular version is the Everyday Salt version, which is in LC200N. There you go. There is another model of this in 20CV, which is kind of sort of their standard version, if you will. So interesting knife. I actually think it provides a pretty darn good value, all things considered, and we'll talk through that as we go through the review. We'll start off with some specs, and then I'll do a couple of size comparisons on this one actually, and then we'll get right into our classic mild-mannered review. Does that sound good? All right, so let's talk specs here for a minute on this Quiet Carry Chase. So we've got a 2.95 inch blade, so just about 3 inches. And, you know, for me, that 2.9 to 3.3 inches is really kind of the sweet spot for me in terms of blade length. I have some knives bigger than that, and I have some knives smaller than that, but generally speaking, for my EDC purposes, I think that's really kind of the area I like to stay in. It gives you enough knife to do what you need for most tasks, but also generally makes the knife a bit more compact and easy to carry around. So there you go. All right, so that was the blade length. Now blade stock on this knife is 0.10 inches, so it's a nice thin blade stock, which is really nice and really definitely helps with the sliciness, and we'll talk about that when we talk about the blade. But there you go. Now we've got a handle length here of 3.96 inches, so just about 4 inches. And then overall, when it's all opened up tip to tail, you've got a 6.91 inch knife, weighing in at 2.7 ounces. So not too bad at all in terms of specs, in my opinion. So there you go. A couple of size comparisons on this particular Chase. So you've got the Chase.
Welcome back. We missed.
And here is a rat number 2. So the Ontario Rat 2, as you can see, very much kind of in the same wheelhouse as the Chase. And then how about another Quiet Carry, and that is the Quiet Carry IQ, another one of my favorite knives, actually. So you can see it's actually kind of right in the middle there, just slightly. It's a little bit smaller than the Rat, which I think actually has just about a 3-inch blade on the money, and then a little bit more blade length than the IQ, which is just sort of smaller in all dimensions in general. So there you go. I think that hopefully is helpful in terms of size comparisons. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about, let's get into our mild-mannered review, shall we? And when we do a classic mild-mannered review, we'll talk about the blade, we'll talk action, we'll talk scales and hardware, and then ergos and carry. So blade, as I mentioned, we have a LC200N steel, very corrosion resistant, definitely, you know, one of my favorite steels in terms of just no muss, no fuss, easy maintenance. EDC blade sharpens very easily, keeps a nice edge for a decent amount of time. The only thing I have kind of weird with LC200N, and again, I think I've mentioned this maybe before in a different video, but it seems so smudgy. And at first, you know, so a lot of my Spyderco knives that are in LC200N, I was like, gosh, this is such a smudgy steel. And then as I've had it in other knives, I've noticed that as well. So I don't know what it is about LC200N for as corrosion resistant as it is. It definitely takes fingerprints and smudges a little bit. So anyways, kind of bugs me a little bit. In fact, I'm going to try to clean that off a little bit for you off camera here. All right, now, no, that didn't help. So, so there we go. That's that LC200M we were talking about. Nice drop point blade, really kind of tall, flat grind there, coming down to a pretty aggressive thin edge, which I like a lot, making this very, very slicey. A lot to like about that. You've got this sort of hemispherical opening hole there, and then some pretty aggressive jimping, actually. The jimping on this knife is not really any kind of joke. It almost looks like what are those, the ramparts sort of on a castle. It's just sort of these square chunks. And it's pretty darn, yeah, you get your thumb on that, or if you had a glove on, yeah, it's definitely grabbing your skin. So this jimping is meant to, I mean, look at that. Oh gosh, that thumb is beat up. Sorry about that if that made you turn away.
Look away, I'm an idiot.
All right. So, anyways, it's pretty aggressive jimping there, and you know you could get in a situation where kind of gunk and stuff gets in there. So something to think about. Anyways, as far as blade markings, a little bit of quiet carry right there on the part here just before this swedge. Very attractive swedge, by the way. And then you have the LC200N as I showed you on this side previously. This one looks a little off center to me or something, like it's sort of cockeyed as it goes up at an angle. I wish they maybe could have put that somewhere else. There's not a lot of other room here, so I'm not sure where they could have done it, but it just looks a little funky right there, especially being, at least to my eyes, not perfectly kind of straight. So anyways. So overall, you know, I think this is a really, really nicely done blade. You've got the grind is done extremely well. The choil, they nailed the choil. The blade termination point, sort of the grind termination, is well in front of the plunge line. Everything is chamfered very, very nicely. Obviously, I did though mention it's got a pretty grippy jimping there, but the swedge, everything else, it's nice. It's definitely it's ticking a lot of the boxes for me, anyways. So pretty darn good. All right, now let's talk about action, because this is where I think a lot of people are gonna maybe not like this knife, honestly. It really only opens one way, and that is with a thumb deploy. And it's designed, and it says right on their website, if you read this when you're looking for this, it is meant for a slow roll with the thumb, just like that. And it deploys like that beautifully. It is on phosphor bronze washers, in keeping with a very rust-resistant type knife, and just sort of a you know, just great type user type knife. It does definitely flip open if you want to do that. It's not really fall shutty. You got to kind of shake it to get that fall shutty, or to get it to close on you rather. But you know, whatever. That's not really what this is meant to be. But it is definitely very, very smooth. So I you know, with phosphor bronze washers, I generally don't expect, you know, kind of action pieces in general. But I will say this one is done very, very smoothly, whether you're doing that slow roll or whether you're going to flick it out. Now, for those of you that might have very skinny fingers, you may be able to do some sort of a middle finger like that kind of flick. Unless I get kind of my nail in there just right, I have really not really been able to do that. So, you know, plan on this being either slow roll or that thumb flick as it relates to the action. Now, it is a liner lock knife, as you can see right there, and this liner actually mirrors. It has that similar jimping that's found up on the top of the blade. So it definitely, you know, there's quite a bit of purchase there when you're wanting to close this liner lock. The cutout here in the G10 makes this very accessible. So I think that's nicely done. So just overall, no complaints there. It is also dead centered, came that way, remains that way. And obviously no blade play or blade rock. So altogether, just a very solid build in terms of action. A lot to like there. But again, if you're really into that, you know, more action-y kind of piece, or if you don't like the idea of being maybe a bit more limited in just a kind of standard slow roll or kind of thumb flick, may not be the one for you. So think about that. All right. Now, let's talk about scales and hardware. This one in that beautiful orange G10, right? Who doesn't like that? You've got this milling here of the 4 holes, which is a signature of quiet carry. You can see that there on the IQ. I like it. It's subtle, but it's also very distinctive. So I do like that quite a bit. Now, the G10, as I mentioned, all of the hardware, including the clip, is stainless steel, however. So the liners, marine grade, but it is stainless steel. It isn't titanium. So think about that in terms of price. And remember, this was like a $135 knife. So, you know, maybe you think that's a good deal. Maybe you don't. I don't know. But everything is flushed and recessed. The pocket clip is quite nice. And we'll talk about that when we get to carry. But yeah, it's stainless steel. Everything pretty smooth, pretty even. We've got, as I mentioned, some weight relief. Well, you've got stainless steel liners, I mentioned. I didn't mention the weight relief. There is some weight relief in there. You can probably see that where they did some skeletonization. Probably a little easier on this side to see. There you go. So pretty nice on that. And again, coming in at 2.7 ounces, yeah, that's pretty nice to carry around.
Nice. Nice. Nice.
So I like that a lot. The fit and finish also very, very nice. No sharp edges on any of these liners. The backspacer also in G10 fits lovely, and it's just smooth as silk around all those spots. So again, it's the sort of execution of this knife that I think is where it starts to, maybe you don't think the materials are quite there to justify that price, although I do. I think once you kind of get it in hand and feel the fit and finish and feel the action just in general, I think it starts to warrant that. So there you go. All right, so that's what we have with scales and hardware. Now let's talk about ergos and carry. So the ergos are great, I think. Maybe a little bit of a spot here because it comes to this kind of edge up here, which I know for some folks, but for my hands, and I don't have the biggest hands, but they're not also the thinnest hands. So it actually fills the palm really well. And with that jimping, as I mentioned, you just are locked into this thing. I mean, it is really pretty comfortable to use in that way. Not really a knife you're going to choke up on. You can choke up a little bit, and there actually is a little bit of jimping up here to sort of allow for that. And it actually even is a tad bit curved. I don't know if you can see that with the design, but there's just a slight, ever so slight kind of curve in there. So you sort of up under the ricasso here, you can get up there and just maybe choke up a little bit. But frankly, I don't really feel like why you need to do that. You can certainly, but I think for me, at least this has felt most comfortable, and that's sort of been the grip that I've used as I've been using it. So from an ergo standpoint, I think this knife is definitely a winner. No real hot spots off this clip or anything like that. But as I've said many times, I feel like hot spots are often subjective. So there you go. Now from a carry, I mentioned this a little bit when we were talking about the pocket clip. It is stainless steel. It's maybe a little firm, but it's got a pretty good spring in it actually, now that I mention it. I mean, I think it's pretty good. Definitely deep carry. It'll go, it goes right up to the edge here. So, it's gonna sit in your pocket and be pretty darn discreet. And I think in a lot of ways that, and it's canted a bit to the side, so you get that tight pocket carry. I mean, just in general, this knife is designed, I think, to be very discreet, which is, and again, sort of the quiet carry, kind of mantra a little bit. This is just a very compact knife. In fact, one of the things I want to point out, you can see as this, I don't know how well you can see that. Let me do that. I mean, the blade is like less than a millimeter away from the edge. That's what I mean about execution. I'm really impressed. I mean, it just comes down right into that backspacer, boom. And everything is just tight together, compact, fairly lightweight, easy to carry, rust resistant, in all the ways that really matter. Yeah, I really do think I like that. Now it is just right side tip up carry, but it is, I guess, ambidextrous. They call it ambidextrous. I mean, you can do this a bit from this side. You definitely can do that. So it's not quite as much of a cutout in space, but you definitely can do that slow roll, I guess, from that side as well. So I'll give them the ambidextrous if that's what they're claiming, which they are. So anyways, I like this knife a lot. I think this is actually one that kind of surprised me. For the price, I think for 135 bucks, this is pretty darn good. I think the 20CV version, which is about 110, I think is maybe the best deal that Quiet Carry offers, personally. I think from a value standpoint, because 20CV is also pretty rust resistant and offers quite a nice kind of everyday steel experience. So, paying a little bit extra for some of these other, I guess, for that rust resistance in the blade, but just to be on the 100% sure side. But at $110 in that 20CV, I think this is a knife that if you're liking the way it looks and you dig the action and kind of dig what it's putting down, which is this sort of compact carry that still provides quite a bit of functionality, I think that's a pretty darn nice option. You can get this in a couple of colors in the G10, and so it just, yeah, I think overall it's a pretty darn nice package. So I like the Chase. I'm enjoying it. I think it's going to stick around in the collection. As I mentioned, I really enjoy my IQ as well. So, well, the knife, not me personally, but in general, Quiet Carry Chase. This is the everyday salt version, but I think the everyday version is equally compelling. So there you go. That's my review on this. I hope you've enjoyed it. Most importantly, of course, please stay safe out there. Be mild-mannered to one another. And all the best.